Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Carter, Editorial Director at IGB. Today, we're delighted to be hosting a webinar with Kambi on platforms for success, what it takes to build a high-performance sportsbook. The complexities that come with building a sportsbook capable of leading the market are vast, offering a deep array of markets with high combinability across pre-match and in-play to end users of paramount importance. But there are many other areas a high-performance sportsbook must get right. In this webinar, Kambi breaks down the essential components needed to create a successful sportsbook, capable of offering engaging experiences for the end user, meaningful scope for differentiation, regulatory certainty, and driving enhanced returns for partners. Our expert speakers today are James Letchford, who's Head of Pre-Sales Solutions for Kambi, and Chris Saw, Kambi's CTO. With that, I'll hand over to James to do the intros very shortly. Just want to say before that, though, there'll be a Q&A section following the presentation, so please do submit questions as we go along, and we'll try to address as many of them as possible in the allocated time. With that, over to you, James.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for joining, everyone. Really excited to talk to you today, and it's a presentation I don't think we've given too many times. So, my name is James Letchford. I work in the commercial team here at Kambi. My background, though, is technical, and I have, I suppose, a unique role in understanding Kambi's technology and sharing that with partners, explaining how we work, explaining the features, discussing the roadmaps. And so I'm in the commercial team, but I also have a kind of dotted line into Chris, who's our CTO. And with that, I'll hand over for Chris's introduction.
Thanks, James. Yeah, again, welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Chris Saw, and I've been with Kambi for a little over 10 years now. In the CTO role, I'm a member of our product leadership, working together with our engineering teams, operational teams, and our partners to make sure that we bring success in the sportsbook arena. So I guess with that, James, we can kick into the slide deck and talk about just give an idea of scale and who is Kambi in terms of high performance and scale. If you're running a sportsbook the way we are, you could expect approximately 850,000 events a year that you need to handle. Beyond that, those events, you'll need to have, next slide, James. On those events, you're going to have approximately 35 million outcomes. That's the markets that we're offering in any given year. Enormous number of markets that we need to be able to offer. And on those markets, we're going to change the prices about 4.3 billion times. Law of big numbers. These are very big numbers and give some idea of the complexity. On these numbers, we're going to need to do certain things. The patrons that our partners drive towards our platform, they're going to make requests into our platform. At peak, we're going to be looking at 1.5 million requests to APIs per minute. We could be validating up to or more than 200,000 coupon validations, where we need to make sure that the coupon a patron's requesting is, the prices are still the same, it's legal in their markets, and that it's a coupon that we, our partner, would like to accept. And ultimately, we could be looking at upwards of 25,000 of those coupons being accepted per minute. So that's a little bit of an idea of the scale of the Kambi sportsbook platform.
Thank you, Chris. I wanted to share with you all, I'm sure many of you know who Kambi are, but I wanted to share this slide in terms of if you didn't, and to give some kind of context to this conversation. So Kambi have 900 employees, or 900 plus employees, going up towards 1,000 now, I believe, across 7 countries. And I think what's interesting about that number is that that's a fairly large number in itself. But actually, if you were to break it down, I think the company is really made up of 2 large groups of people. The first one is engineering, and the second one is in trading. And I think there's a thin layer of management over the top, and sales are part of that. But that gives you an idea of the rough numbers it takes to build a sportsbook. And I think that's important because Kambi are designed to build a software as a service B2B sportsbook. We're not a B2C, we just exist for our partners, of which there are 30. So it's a fairly select group. It's Kambi work across the globe, so it's not just in the United States, also in Europe. And I think that group is our reason for being is to share knowledge, to help them deliver the best business that they possibly can be in the sportsbook. And we do that, and we have some special things we're going to go through in this presentation. So we do that for around 5 million active player accounts. So that kind of gives you some figures, to understand those figures that Chris has just given, what is generating that load. And that's around 5 million. And it's also important to add here that that's across regulated markets. So we've got 35 regulated markets across 6 continents. And I think that for all of those things together makes a fairly unique company, has a unique DNA, both in terms of how we build software, in how we deliver software, in how we share knowledge. I think in terms of the approach that we've taken to build a sportsbook. And what we're going to talk about today, I think will give some insight to that. But this is not a B2C sportsbook. This is designed as a B2B sportsbook. It's designed to scale as a B2B sportsbook. It's designed to differentiate, and we'll cover that through the presentation. It's designed to split in many different areas. So I think that's really important to add that from the ground up, Kambi has been built as a B2B sportsbook. So if I click into the next slide, and Chris will run through in terms of the components and the different parts of what makes a sportsbook at a high level.
Yeah, I think it's important when we're talking about what it takes to build a high-performance sportsbook. We talk about what being a sportsbook means to us. And on the left-hand side, it's important to note that Kambi works with a lot of data suppliers. They're going to be providing the event occurrences, the information we need on which to make that offering. That comes into our technical platform, the Kambi Sportsbook platform. The core of that is the transactional systems that let us do everything we need to do. There's 3 specific areas where that technical platform really enables high performance, or must enable high performance. First and foremost, risk management. Secondly, odds and trading, making sure the right markets are out there. And finally, and very importantly, compliance, that the platform needs to make sure that what's being offered is the right thing at the right time in the right place. So we sit there in the middle, taking in generally occurrences, event scheduling, it's the live data, and in the future, we can take in probabilities there, and we can make sure that those key activities occur, and then let our operator present that towards their patrons. So what makes that set of things high performing? We've sat down and thought about that question, and today we've got 6 major areas where we think these are the things that describe high performance. So first off, UX focused trading. What do I mean by that? The key thing in what we need to present to the end user is a UX that they want. It needs to be relevant to them. It needs to have the markets the patron want, combinable in the way they want, with pricing that we're confident in. Because we have to be able to take bets from the patrons that our customers want to take bets from on all of those things. The key to pricing confidence, of course, is risk management. We want to understand who the patron is and their value to our partners. And we have experience with our footprint, with enormous data flows that help us make informed decisions on risk and on pricing. And we are, that starts with the people at Kambi. In the trading group, in the engineering group, we deeply understand how this needs to work. And then we bake that human knowledge into increasing use of machine learning and AI to ensure we can do this at scale.
And I would add to this, I think that I've been with Kambi for 4 years. And I think when I joined, it was a real kind of revelation to me that all of the software that we use in-house, we build. And I think that when I started looking at this, I have a background as a programmer. I looked at this and I thought, this is something we can solve, in a system, in a computer system. We're trying to solve it all in a computer system. And of course, we have really groundbreaking systems. But for me, the system here, what's really interesting is that there's a human element to it. And Chris's teams do not only just build out the front end and build out the risk, they build out the trading software that those teams use. They're deeply integrated. They build out the risk systems that we use internally. So for me, it was always like, this is as a tech person, I'm still a tech person, still loving that, that side of the business. It's something that I kind of think as, can you solve this all in a computer system? And I think that the answer to that is no. It's a business and a human system. That's why we have 900 plus people. We have cutting edge software, but actually they need people around it. So to come in to think that this would all be done completely with computers from a trading perspective, I think is not going to be as good as you get those specialized traders who understand the sport, who understand the risk, who have that human intuition about what's going to happen. So for me, that would be a big takeaway. It deals with humans, and that's part of the reason that we're special. I think we believe in that, continue to believe in that. So that's the bit that I'd wanted to add in terms of on the trading.
Thanks.
So on to the next one.
Yep, the second element after our UX focus is simply the scalability. If we talk about those big numbers that we started with, there's an obvious element there. That's simply transactional scalability. You've got to be able to handle the volume. That's just a matter of engineering, right? But really, it's more than that. Those big numbers they understate the complexity when you take into account the details of what that UX focused offer is. When we're talking about same game parlays, you have an enormous data set that you need to be able to calculate. You run your simulations and make sure you can have a deterministic price to give to the patron. You've got that enormous result set. We've got to do it fast. We've got to do it at scale. Price differentiation, James is going to go into in a minute. Again, on all these prices we generate, we need to be able to, at scale, fast, filter that out for the way the operator wants to see it. We have to make sure we have consistency both at the edge and at the core. Then, there's still engineering challenges. Then we go into architectural and geographic challenges. Regulation, it's wonderful, it opens up markets, but it also brings constraints. You need to deploy and scale in many places. It's not enough to build a cloud-based system that scales inside AWS or Azure, or whichever cloud you find most interesting, because that's not fit for purpose in the modern regulated market. You need to be able to deploy the elements of your system, the critical elements that meet the regulatory requirements in each jurisdiction. And you even go as far as to say you have to be able to run them on property. We are able to deploy our servers, our software components into a casino property where the regulation requires it. What you really have to be careful is you don't end up running 40 separate sports books. You need to run one sports book with many different ways of slicing what you've produced.
And I think that a bit like what we were saying earlier in terms of, and Chris was mentioning the trading and the risk, I think that you can look at the infrastructure piece. These are three separate companies. These are specialized skills that we have internalized. So think about the different types of technology, the different types of programmers, the different types of skill sets that we have. It's really wide ranging. From obviously very complex back-end systems, both from and actually one of the things that we do in this is that we, in terms of our hardware, okay, we don't manufacture hardware, of course, but we actually have custom designs that we have put together that are specialized in terms of how they're set up for scalability for the things that Chris has just mentioned. And again, that's a specialized team of people who are there designing out how we, the actual hardware side of things. I think the other thing is that this is a hugely complex domain. Multiple cross boundaries, as Chris said, so I think that's always difficult in terms of data and how that flows. And they're long-living systems. You can't lose data. You can't lose anyone's bet. So this, for me, has parallels with the financial industry, with banking. And I think that is a quote that we've said, I think, on a few earlier presentations, where we think this is one of the most complex pieces of software imaginable. And I think that it is because it covers very high peaks. It's a bit like Amazon at Christmas in terms of loading up in terms of big events, in terms of World Cups or NFL games. So there's a peak thing, and it is incredibly difficult to ensure that we've got that all correctly done and goes in the right way, and that is something that we've done. So on to the next section, which is differentiation. And I think this is a really interesting slide and a really interesting area, because for me, this is where Kambi really excels in terms of the innovation. Kambi, as I said at the beginning, is a B2B sportsbook. And so we have put a lot of effort into our operators, allowing them to differentiate the Kambi technical stack in many different ways. In fact, I think that goes to the core of what we do. And does this work for the operators? Is it something they can control? Do they want to control it? And I think that actually we will go through a couple of slides in a moment, giving some more details, but they largely break down into kind of key areas. I think the first one is the operator-focused APIs. So these are a really rich suite of APIs that we have, and we will list them in a moment, but they're well documented, they're set up for external use. And yes, we may use them internally, but actually they're designed for external consumption. The feedback we've had from those from some really, really first-class engineering teams on our operator side has been very positive. We also, and so that, by the way, that allows them to take either data or to programmatically control the client. Price differentiation is a really interesting tool. Maybe it can be used programmatically, but it's a big operational thing, allowing people to go through and change their strategy to pricing at different granular levels. And again, we'll show a little bit more later in a moment. Client and UX. I mean, client's really important. It's the thing that users touch, right? It's the thing that maybe people want to differentiate on the most. So what have we done in that space? And lastly, I think it comes around in terms of real-time data, real-time feedback, allowing people to create event-based systems. What just happened? What do I want to do about it? And I think the biggest use case of that is probably around our bonus engine. So the bonus engine is a really well thought through system that has been in production and thought out and battle tested, battle hardened with some really big tier 1 operators. So let's go in a little bit more detail. So when I talk about the operator focused APIs, what do we mean by that? Well, as I said, it's a suite of APIs that are available to our partners, and they are used internally, and they are probably versions, continually worked on with versions as well. We have a large team of people ensuring that they're always up to date and ensuring that any new features, and again, we come up with some really good innovation, are put in the APIs first, so that actually if you want to build out on them, you're part of our roadmap. You are a true partner in that respect. So we might be adding to our client, and we would also add that to the APIs that support that client if you wanted to build your own client, so you can release at the same time. I think that level of thought, that level of kind of care to our operators is what makes us quite special. But the operators would have the ability to adapt the client, and that's a really clever system. I'll give you some slides on that in a minute. Obviously, integration is key to us. We just do a sportsbook. We are just a sportsbook provider, so we have to ensure that we have first-class integration to either your internal systems or third-party proprietary platforms. So that's a really important piece, and we have, again, well-documented APIs. The other things I think are probably a little bit more interesting. So player API is what happens when the player, obviously the interaction with the player, not just when you place the bet, but also the history, allowing you to pull that information back from Kambi and see what's happened, and typically display that back into the client, obviously for the player to consume. But that's a very important API if you want to build out your own client, because that's the way that you would place bets into Kambi. Bonus API, I think, probably says what it on the tin, it is what's interesting here that the API is the programmatic way of controlling our bonuses, both from an admin perspective and from a consumer perspective. We also have an admin back office tooling if you wish to go through that route. The last two I think are probably a little bit more interesting, even more so. Bet Message Collector I think is a really innovative tool that allows you to see real-time data after the bet has been placed. So that is at an aggregate level, allowing you to control what happens next, allowing you as an operator to think, I want to either bonus a player, I want to see what's happened, I want to be in control of that journey, I want to be able to put information back into that player depending on what's just happened. So again, this is something we make available. And lastly, I think is probably the one that you would imagine that we would have, and that is all of the data for the sportsbook. So all the events, all the markets, all the odds, that is done in an API, and we share that. The domain model around that is complex, and we have many good documentation, but also training, talking to operators. This is how you would build a sportsbook based on all of our heritage, based on all of the knowledge that we can have within that 900 team. This is how we would use it. And I think that best practice session is really useful for operators to get up to speed, to understand a new vertical, maybe a new industry. And we're very proud of that. I think we are, you are talking to real experts in that space, and to have one-to-one sessions with them, I think is, and obviously Chris heads up that team as our CTO. So we make that all available with first-class documentation. So this is an interesting one. I'm going to talk through on this, but I also say Chris is going to help join me on this, because this is a complex piece of tech that we've made available to operators, and this allows operators to take Kambi pricing and really to own that pricing, to be aggressive if they want to go up against competitors, or maybe want to allow from a customer acquisition. Maybe they want to soften prices. They have the ability to do that, and they can do that in different jurisdictions. So this is something that, from a sportsbook, an example we have here is obviously in the United States, to have different pricing in different jurisdictions at different times, at different sports, in different events, and even for different bet offers. So that's done both. We have some very advanced back-end office tools that which are made available to operators. And Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the difficulties that we've faced in building this out, and some of the challenges that we've faced.
I guess what I'd say, James, is going back to the point on scalability in this area. I mean, we at the core, we generate a set of probabilities, and we manage those. But that back office James mentioned that allows the operator to come in and modify based on, first of all, market jurisdiction, but also bet offer. You do a league level, event level, bet offer level, and figure out how you'd like to adjust the payback. I mean, it's a very powerful tool when used well to differentiate yourself from the rest of the market, or differentiate between markets. And it takes having the system that can keep that consistent from the core of the probabilities through to what the patron sees, and make sure that that's actually what they're able to place bets on. And if they're outside that market, they don't have that price, etc. I mean, that's quite a challenge in making sure that works.
Thanks, Chris. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples of the UX, and this is a really interesting area from a technology perspective. And I think Kambi have done some really innovative things in this space. So the client is, in this respect, what we're showing here. This is obviously a web client built out in JavaScript. I think it's probably some typical use cases of REST versus WebSockets in terms of pulling that data, making sure it's all synced. But what Kambi have done really well, I think, the state management behind this, I think, is really first class in terms of how you keep those in sync, in terms of rendering, in terms of performance. Some of these things are not always apparent to you as a user, but it is really apparent if it goes wrong. But we've gone one step further than that. That's difficult to do in its own right. That's difficult if you are a B2C to build your own client. It's a tough thing to do. But what Kambi have done is actually they've made it even more difficult for themselves, and that we support multiple designs on that. And I think it's a really innovative thing in terms of allowing operators to take control of either the template in its entirety, so that the page layout completely can be complete scratch and can be rebuilt with that state management, with that data integration already done in the back, you know, in the unseen part of it, and including the bets bit, but allowing you complete freedom to build that out. So, or you may not want to, as a operator, want to go and have that complete journey. You might want to say, you know what, I like the Kambi client, and why shouldn't you? It's a really good client, builds some first-class UX team based in Stockholm, and a lot of the input from the Philly team as well. You might want to tweak it. And I think Kambi support that journey. We support you from if you want to take it over, or if you want to do just some really minor tweaks. And it's really down to you as an operator what you decide.
Yeah, I think, James, the interesting point on that one is that the choice is with the operator. We have the flexibility to take our vanilla client and skin it the way you like, or take the bits you want and replace the rest.
And I think that that's been really wildly successful, by the way. I think that operators do like that. And again, coming back to this thing about partnership, I've had many conversations with front-end teams who've not worked in sports wagering or sports betting before, but are really good front-end teams. And once you kind of share how we do things and share the data, they really like it. I think it's a nice system to work within. And that's not always the case with developers. You know, if they don't like things, they will be quite quick to tell you. Going back to those APIs that I mentioned a couple of slides back, this is where you would pull them in. And I think we've got a special slide to show you that in a minute. But it's not just web, right? So I think we've all know that native has kind of made a move for sports wagering. And I think that Penn have done a first-class job in this. They are a great development team. I know them. I think they are very strong, but they have built out their clients based on the Kambi APIs. And actually, we have some special APIs for native clients. So this is in the case of the offering replication API, how we get data to them as an operator for them to then surface in the native app is different to a REST API, which you may use for the loading state in the web. So again, that shows innovation in terms of what we do, and that's available to all of our operators if they wanted to go that route. I think these guys have done a fantastic job. I think it's really good looking, and it suits their marketing and everything else. But underneath, the prices, the odds, the markets, it can be the placement of the bets is Kambi, and I think that it's testament to both systems that they've worked really well together in terms of supporting that. So that is an interesting use case. This is the one in terms of looking again. What are we doing for why do we have APIs? And if you look at Unibet, who are obviously tier one operators of Kambi's, they have utilized the APIs. They're a fantastic development team again. I mean, again, really first class. And this shows you the template layout in terms of the Kambi Sportsbook, and that they wanted to consume the offering API, and then they wanted to repurpose it through some clever AI that they were running in terms of recommended matches for you as a player. And this is an example of that. That's nothing. That's them in terms of creating their strategy and creating their approach to what they want to build a sportsbook, and we're enabling them to do that. So that's kind of it from a differentiation perspective. And I think just to finish up on that, it is client, it is support for new clients such as native, it's data support, it's maybe utilizing these offerings, these odds to create innovative marketing campaigns. We're there as a partner.
I think, James, is a great demonstration of Kambi's technical capability. You know, not only do we tap into these data flows to improve our product, but we're able to offer them in real time to our partners so they can improve, they can take the ownership of improving the product on their side themselves.
Agreed. So I think that from a differentiation point of view is probably where I wanted to finish on.
Yep. Thanks, James. And I think after differentiation, the fourth of our 6 points are compliance and regulatory. As I mentioned earlier, the big driver for Kambi as a B2B sportsbook is to be in these regulated markets to make sure we're compliant. And there's sort of 3 key elements we could talk about there in being a high-performance sportsbook. The first being offer compliance. If we're handling 850,000 events every year with 36 million outcomes, where are those things happening? Which teams are part of those events? Which players are on those teams? Which of those events are tier 1 or tier 2 in Illinois? Which players are under 18 then we can't show in Sweden? There's just an enormous amount of things that you have to understand to meet today's regulatory environment. You have to produce enough metadata so that you can have informed filtering and make sure you absolutely know your offering meets your local regulations. The implications of not doing it are quite serious, both in terms of your regulatory fines and the view of your ability to service a regulated market. And I think that that offering compliance is really key. And behind offering compliance, we have technical compliance. Understanding how you must meet the local regulations from a technical perspective. That's, as I mentioned earlier, being able to host your critical components in that local jurisdiction. It's whether the regulations are based on GLI 33 or there's something more bespoke for that jurisdiction. Having the capacity to adapt your architecture as needed to meet the regulations asks. We don't imagine we can ask regulators to change the rules because it's inconvenient for us to meet their technical requirements. We have to have a platform that can do that. And then beyond the technology, particularly towards day 1 readiness, we have people and processes. That's one of the key elements to compliance and regulatory performance. Is we have great teams in these areas who can work with our partners to make sure we're ready with them for day 1 launch in any jurisdiction that has decided to regulate and launch sportsbook. Going beyond day 1, these same teams will make sure that we have all the data, all the processes, the internal controls that demonstrate continuing compliance, make getting through audits simple. And then through changes to regulations, monitoring that and making sure we adapt our platform. We have continual conversation with you about making sure we both stay compliant. I think that's about it on that topic there, James.
Cool.
Then, 5th tier, product development. It's going to be having a market-driven focus. We have 900 people at Kambi focused on being a B2B sportsbook provider. We're a sportsbook provider. That's the only thing we do. We're not worried about casino. We're not worried about player account management. We're worried about making sure we have a great sportsbook product. We think about where the market needs us to go, what our partners need from us to provide a market-leading UX to their patrons. So this is a big part of being a high-performance sportsbook, is having that market-driven focus. And Kambi is able to do that because it is our focus. That's led through that engaging offering, be it the pricing, the same game parlays, adjustable paybacks, bonusing, cash out, all these features that make it a great UX. And we work to make sure that we evolve those features, we have them available so that we can keep the patrons engaged with our partners. The stickiness of our features is important to our partners. They need to have a great sportsbook experience when they visit the partner's brand. And we recognize there might be an element, as James talked about, differentiation, that they might like to do themselves. And that's we have a great set of tools there today. I think that the next big thing, and it's something we've talked about at our Capital Markets Day, we've been working on what we call our gateway. That beyond taking in live data on events, we're opening ourselves the possibility of taking in probabilities. So allowing other probabilities to propagate through our systems and take advantage of everything else we do. So if a partner wants to bring something unique to their users, our goal is to make that possible for them. We want to have the partner in control of the offering where they want to be in control of the offering.
I would add to that, and I think that this for me is one of the things that makes Kambi very special. I think you probably maybe will realize this, but I think the hard part of building really good software is not just in the programming. The hard part is really getting the right model. And I think that the work and the effort that goes into product development here in terms of simplifying that model, improving that model, is continuous. New ways of looking at it, it takes a lot of time. And I think this is something that you don't just sit down and write code. We look at how we can improve. We look at how we can make new features for our partners, but also how we can improve the core continuously. And really, I think that for me is that the concepts define Kambi. The code can change over time. It can be improved as it always is. But for me, the product and the innovation and together is a very special way of doing it. And I think it is fairly unique. And I've been, in the time that I've been here, I've said 4 years, I've continually been impressed by the way that we build software. So I think the product allows us to tease out those use cases and continue to kind of be at the forefront in terms of how we would, both in terms of the product, but also in terms of the delivery. So that for me is, I think, probably Kambi's DNA in one slide would be around product development. And on to the next. And I think, sorry, Chris, did you want to?
No, absolutely. Just a very, very good points there.
On to our number 6.
Yeah, pillar number 6, and I mean this is a short one, but it's also very important. Financial performance is a critical part of a high performance sportsbook. Revenue actually matters. We have a track record here. If we can look at the next slide, James, of driving our partners' turnover and sustaining consistent margins. Product is all of the other 5 pillars of a high performance sportsbook ultimately lead to a high performance sportsbook that makes you money. That's what we're here to do for our partners, and we're incentivized to do that for our partners. So it's really worth mentioning that we have an excellent track record of as I said, driving our operators' turnover up, and on that increase in turnover, continually delivering consistent GGR. And I guess that summarizing what we talked about, our UX focused trading, our differentiation, our scalability, our offering and compliance, and ultimately financial success. That is what we believe drives a high performance sportsbook. And I guess at that point, James, we're ready for questions.
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you. I'll come back for the Q&A. Thank you, James and Chris, for a great discussion. As Chris said, we've now got time to address some questions from the audience. To our listeners, please continue to send through any questions you may have, and we'll address as many as possible. I'm going to kick things off, actually. Of these 6 points you've highlighted, which is the most difficult for bookmakers to get right?
So it's a very good question, because I don't think. I mean, obviously, from our perspective, every one of them is very important. I think being focused on sportsbook, which flows through on all the points, is critical. Whether it's in the UX on the trading side, or in looking towards, from the product development perspective, the features. But being able to be 100% sportsbook focused is very important, and having the resources to produce the product with 100% focus is a tough thing for a smaller operator.
And I agree with that, Chris. I would say, and this might be my opinion on this, I'd say that trading and risk. I mean, I think all the other thing is tough as well, and we've gone through many of those, but I think that those 2 things are real-time, money's involved, probability, it's the human to computer systems. I think it's tough. I think it's tough to be really good at it.
Okay, thanks, guys. Right. Check question. Okay, cool. Okay, just next time. I mean, combinability is something that's come a few times. I mean, how important is the level of combinability across pre-match and in-play become in defining what makes a high-performance sportsbook? What's the take on that first?
Yeah, combinability is one of the big challenges when you have a very, very broad offering, particularly if you're bringing in other third parties to help run it. I mean, which we will be doing with our gateway. If your patron wants to have a same game parlay on one game and a single bet on another game and want to make that a separate parlay, you have to have the system that can understand that those things are combinable. You have to have the metadata within your offering to understand those are combinable, and they're combinable without creating some systematic risk in terms of what you could lose if that combination comes in. And that's not a small challenge. You can add in other products, but to keep other products being combinable is a challenge. And that's because we are, first of all, everything we have today we've built ourselves, so intrinsically we understand combinability. And then as we're developing our gateway, we're making sure we maintain the necessary UX to keep it being an engaging product, even where we are perhaps not providing all the pricing.
James, think so on that one?
I think everything Chris has just said. I think it's incredibly tough. I think it's a compute problem as well. So the raw crunching of numbers there makes it a difficult thing to do, especially in real-time clients. There's a lot of computers going on there. So, but yeah, I think that's a difficult thing. But I think Chris is probably closer to the core on that than I.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, moving on to slightly more controversial question. Are there many examples of sportsbooks which have successfully done everything in-house?
There's maybe one. I think we could say Bet365. They are famous for doing everything in-house. I think beyond there, you'd struggle to find many that do everything in-house. There's lots of examples where maybe you're using the OpenBet platform as part of your core. Maybe you're taking in BetGenius prices for part of what you're doing. Maybe you're taking same game parlay from someone else. I don't think there's anyone other than Bet365 that has pure vertical integration for their sportsbook, because it's you look at their resources, it's an enormous challenge. And that's going back to Kambi's creation. We were created to help compete with that challenge because it's difficult to do everything yourself.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Bet365 is a fantastic company. I think we are in that fight with them in terms of our operators. So yeah, I agree because I can't think of many others that are at that level. And for Kambi to be able, to be able to kind of, I think it's our old marketing phrase, like we're going to springboard sportsbooks, and I think that's what we do. We allow people to get up to that level to go and compete with, Bet365. So I think it's a challenge. It's a great industry to be part
of. Perfect. Thanks, guys. We do actually have a question coming from the audience, actually. This one is from, let's just go check back. Let's give the name of this one now. This is from Christopher Mansfield. This is coming from. And the question is, how sensitive can a pricing differentiation strategy be? And how often do operators have to update their strategy to compete against other sportsbooks?
I think we can answer that in two parts, perhaps. How sensitive can the strategy be? I mean, as mentioned, there's multiple levels on which you can set the differentiation strategy, whether it's a league level, event level, bet offer level, and then I mean there are obviously limits as to how far you can flex the payback, but they're relatively broad, and even then we have opportunities for what we call extreme price diff, where you might like to go beyond those limits, and we can agree with a partner that that's acceptable. in certain circumstances. I mean, the tools are there. It's a discussion as to making sure we can maintain good risk management and good margins together with the partner. How often do they have to update their strategy? I mean, that really is up to them. Our partner success teams will work with our partners to help them evolve their strategies, but we have all the tooling necessary for them to manage it themselves. We don't have to get involved that much.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, it could be real time. I mean, you could be updating, you know, for your match several times. You could be, you know, having that. It gives you the control in the back office. Of course, it's not as fully featured as the trading software that the traders use internally, but you've got a good level of control that you could be having a sportsbook manager or sportsbook team utilize that as their main piece of software within Kambi in terms of what they're seeing, in terms of coming in from a marketing perspective for their players, where they are, they have control over that. So, you know, that can be real-time changes that they want to make.
Thank you. Right, next question. Basically, we're coming down. I've got a couple more questions left in the locker, so to speak. So to the audience, if you've got any more, please send them in now. We'll get to them as soon as we can. The lessons of recent years not suggest that it's easier for operators to provide meaningful differentiation to players if they run their sportsbook in-house.
I mean, our focus on our three core areas, technology, risk management, regulation, is where differentiation is of limited value in that respect. You know, we add enormous value in that, just simply that regulatory compliance, meaning you don't have to worry about it. We'll take care of that, and there is no differentiation there. Either you have a legal offering or you don't. So it's very important to the areas other than differentiation, that the things we do under the hood that just make sure you have a product that works. But I mean, James, you've talked to, and you could probably talk more to the examples of empowering differentiation.
Well, I think that question in terms of, you know, whether they're going to build versus buy, I think that conversation is too simplistic in many ways. I think that what Kambi do is they do a lot of the heavy lifting in a way that is difficult to replicate on time and expensive. And actually, if you were to rebuild out some of that yourselves and you were like, you know, tempted to do it, as Chris said, there's a lot of stuff that actually isn't that sexy. You know, compliance is not, you know, you have to make sure you do it correctly, but actually, do you want to build that out and spend a lot of time building out a compliance system? And I think what Kambi have done is they've allowed you to build your competitive advantage on buying into Kambi, and we do that in several ways. We do that in terms of we've offered up all the types of different, you know, APIs and really the same as what we would use internally. But also, and I don't think we've really spoken about this too much, we are based in terms of the model on a network model and allowing data that is gained at a network level in terms of the scale of that, allowing for better decisions to be made, and that is then allows you, whether that's through price differentiation, whether that's through building out native apps, whether that's through, and I think what, you know, certainly in the US we're seeing where people are pulling in the APIs and building out in terms of their marketing campaigns and what they want to do, then I would say that there's plenty of overhead to build out a differentiated sportsbook. And look, it's still a young issue, especially in the US. And I think that innovation, you don't want to rebuild some of the kind of things that are going to take you a lot of time, a lot of effort. And actually, when there's so much more interesting stuff that's still to be done, it's still out there from an operator's perspective.
I mean, I think to add a final point there, James, I mean, for someone considering going the vertical integration route, you have to spread yourself quite thin or have a very, very large organization. And you know, if you're spreading yourself thin, playing product quality catch up, it's a very expensive option to take.
Thanks, guys. Right, next one. How can operators best juggle product development with the growing technical challenge of compliance as more jurisdictions regulate?
I mean, the benefit of going with Kambi is that you don't have to worry about that, right? We will take care of product compliance in those jurisdictions. If if you're trying to build it yourself, not only you have to figure out the complex integration process yourself in terms of managing the challenges of compliance. That's the key benefit we bring, going back to the unsexiness, as James said, of the core of compliance. It's not a product feature that the patron cares about, but it's key to staying in business, and it's non-trivial.
I would add, I think that everyone who's going to build a system, and I'm sure there's people on this call now who are building out stuff and who are tech, I think everyone thinks that their system is going to do it all and it's going to be, theirs is different, and I'm sure Kambi would feel the same. But actually what comes, in terms of compliance, what comes down to it is human beings and code together. So I would say that, that is something that you're not going to be able to do it all in a system without those expertise, without those people who are going to be on top of that compliance. And I think that's something, again, and in some ways that pains me to say that, because I think as a programmer, as a technologist, you always think you can do it all in the system. But the truth of it is you need experts, you need human beings. And that would be my message to take away from this meeting today. It's human beings and systems together.
I mean, the technology enables the ideas, the product focus of our teams to actually deliver something that's valuable for our operators and their patrons. Technology by itself is nothing without the goals it's trying to meet.
Okay, thanks Chris, thanks James. We're coming towards the end of our session now. That's sort of all we have time for today. So just thank you very much again to James and Chris for joining us and sharing your insight. Before we go, I've actually posted a link to Kambi's brand new campaign video in the chat. It's beautifully put together, so I'll heartily recommend you click on the link and take a look at this. Okay, I'll just let you find that now actually. And then okay, right. Today's webinar has been recorded and will be available to listen to on demand shortly on iGamingBusiness.com for you to rewatch and share with your colleagues. Otherwise, we'll see you soon. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.